Ordinary Women Podcast. This is now episode 18, and today we have here the Nicholas Mosby, Baltimore City Council President for Baltimore City.
The entire city, yeah.
The entire city. Thank you so much for coming on and joining us today.
First name Ordinary, last name Woman.
There we go. That's us.
Thanks for having me on.
Yes, that's us. That's us. Thank you so much.
I don't think you guys are ordinary, though. So I
we are not only ordinary.
The background of this name and what does that mean?
So it started off, we were just ordinary women, and it's like ordinary women doing extraordinary things because we do so many things, not just a regular 9 to 5. I have 2 other businesses besides working for Baltimore City myself.
Excuse me.
Yeah, so I also have an event planning company. I also used to own a catering and food truck. And now I own Ordinary Women Podcast.
Wow.
So I have Wicked Kitchen. So that's how you had such a phenomenal spread.
Here we
Yes,
go.
we're not gonna talk
They
about.
don't know about that.
Yeah, we're gonna give you a little bit of forgiveness
Uh-oh.
on that one. Yeah, but thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast. We're excited to have you here. And there were so many other questions sent to us to ask you for this podcast. But let's talk about just Nick.
All right.
We want to talk about Nick the person, not so much Nick the politician. So let's tell us who is Nicholas. I think Nicholas is a lot cooler.
You like
than Nick.
Nick? That's actually my real name.
I know.
Oh yeah, you know that.
Yes, I knew your real name was Nicholas. But tell us who is Nicholas.
So I grew up in Northeast Baltimore. I tell people all the time. I grew up in a 3-bedroom house, typical Northeast Baltimore house, with 6 women and 1 bathroom. So my grandmother, she was a matriarch of our family. My mother was there, obviously, with me. Aunt, sister, cousin, but I shared a bedroom with my mother and my sister until I was like 14 years old.
Wow.
I tell people I slept on the top bunk. My older sister slept on the bottom bunk, and we watched our mother get up every single day, catch 2 and 3 buses to put food on the table for us and provide for us. With that, it was a house not with a whole lot of resources at all the time, but definitely a whole lot of love. And I became the first person in my family to go away to college. Went to a school called Tuskegee University, where I was a first generation college grad. Majored in electrical engineering. Always wanted to give back and put on for my city, so moved back to Baltimore, worked as an engineer, and then got into this thing called politics.
Politics. So why did you choose politics, or did politics choose you?
I mean, it's kind of hard to separate the two with my story. So my mother, she was, not into politics other than she always voted. She always knew who our elected officials were on the state or local level. So I just always watched her. One of my fond moments with my mother is always going into the ballot, the voting booth, shutting the curtain. And then, you guys probably aren't old enough, but you had to go and press the
I'm
levers.
there. I was there.
And then you had to take the thing and slide it all the way over. So my mother used to allow me to do that, and I used to look forward to it. But I remember in the 3rd grade, Mayor Kurt Schmoke was the first African-American elected mayor of Baltimore. And I tell folks, it was kind of like a microcosm of what we saw in 2008 when President Barack Obama was elected on the national level. But just the level of excitement and hope and enthusiasm that I had, not only in my house, but in my neighborhood, and when I went to school the next day, with my teachers, I was just really attracted to this thing called, politics and public service. And then I was playing baseball at the Wees, and I was selected as one of the kids to meet the mayor at the new Camden Yards, where he was unveiling his campaign, The City That Reads.
Yes, I remember that.
And he's in a rocking chair reading to all these Little League baseball players from around the city. And I'm one of the Little League baseball players who was in all the Enoch Pratt libraries. So I followed him from there, and then when I went to Tuskegee, he wound up being on our board of regents, and I bumped into him there. So I just kept bumping into this person that I ultimately looked up to because he provided so much hope, so much inspiration to my mother, to my teachers, to my community.
Wonderful. I remember that slogan as well. Baltimore City, the city of reads.
Reads.
Yes, Courtney. I know Courtney has a couple questions for you as well. Yeah.
Outside of your children, what do you enjoy doing, even on a daily basis or on the weekends?
I'm big into sports, so I definitely love watching, particularly the Ravens or the Orioles. Love basketball. I love following high school basketball players from Baltimore all around the country when they go to different colleges and live out their hoop dream. So really into sports a lot.
Wonderful. So who's going to win playoffs?
Who's going to win? Well, hopefully Ant-Man and Edwards. Really rooting for the Timberwolves this year.
Okay.
No one expected them to do what they were able to do in the first round. The first game of the second round, they're playing the defending champions, the Denver Nuggets, and they handled them. So hopefully he'll continue to show that he's like one of the best players in the NBA.
Wonderful. If you could change one thing in your past, what would it be?
If I could change one thing in my past, what would it be? Man, that's a tough question because I'm perfect.
Oh.
No.
Oh, wow.
What would it be? Definitely, as a young man coming out, and kind of like being a breadwinner for my family, maybe making different personal financial decisions. That wasn't in the short term of like taking care of my family, but more or less setting things up for the long term.
Sure.
Definitely would have probably taken some different decisions. In my early 20s, early 30s.
Yeah. So what's life gonna be like for you after politics?
Still giving back. I mean, the idea of being a public servant doesn't start or stop when you're an elected official. I think the best elected officials just have that in them.
Yeah.
I've always been like SGA president. I've always been involved or
overachiever,
whatever, or like a leadership role on different sports teams I've played on. So, I'm going to always pour into my community. I know what Baltimore should mean, can mean, and ultimately, if we do it right, will mean, particularly as it relates to uplifting of black and brown folks. So, whether in politics or not, I still plan on having a seat at the table and still, pushing the agenda forward to ensure that Baltimore's the city that we know it all can become.
Wonderful, wonderful.
So what do you do to unwind? Like you have to get off work. What you do?
I don't know, be an Uber driver for my daughters, be an ATM machine for them.
Yes.
Clean up. I don't think people really realize the amount of sacrifice you make as an elected official. The phone never really goes off.
Yeah.
Somebody will send an email that's just as important at 2 p.m. or 2 a.m. If something happens, typically it happens between the hours of 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. That's when the phone rings. So it's always something, related to work. And it's a lot. But I enjoy it. I love it. I don't really have any specific hobbies or clubs that I'm a part of that kind of help me unwind, I guess. Yeah. I don't do any bird watching, hiking,
No fishing, no bird. Okay.
Yeah, not big fishing.
Okay.
Happy belated birthday.
Oh, yeah.
How was the party?
Oh, I think it turned out great. We planned it in like literally 2 weeks. It was a big birthday. It's 45. Obviously, there's been a lot going on. Wanted to celebrate, 45 milestone. So it turned out really nice.
We saw you out there doing your Q strike.
Uh-oh.
We saw you out there. We saw you.
For some reason, everybody's seen that video. I don't know how.
So what would you tell 18-year-old Nick? What would you, if you could change your past, what would you tell?
You keep wanting me to change my past.
I know.
All right, so 18-year-old Nick, what would I tell them? The stuff I tell my daughters. Make sure you get an IRA, compound interest. The stuff that we don't learn about. Make sure you get a life insurance policy, the stuff that we're not necessarily taught. Identify something that you can learn as a skill set and turn into a business.
There you go.
Be an entrepreneur.
Yes.
That you can always have. So this conversation is kind of easy because unfortunately I probably annoy my daughters too much. At this time, because I see them creeping up. I have a 15-year-old and a 13-year-old. So, I'm going back, telling them all the things that I wish somebody made it, told me when I was their age. So, yeah, I would just say things about being more intentional and understanding money and finance and setting yourself up for a future that you aren't thinking about at all, but eventually comes really quickly.
Sure.
Right? And, doing it at such a young age, particularly when we talk about things like compound interest, for a kid that's putting $50 away a month or whatever, that means a lot, in 20, 30 years.
Right.
So,
a big question.
Uh-oh. I thought all these questions have been big questions. Man.
No.
Here we go.
Are you dating?
Am I dating? No, not dating. Giving some time, for the transition, particularly with my daughters. They're going through so much. And then, I'm extremely busy as it relates to the campaign. So that is my primary focus is right now is my daughters, my family, and then getting reelected right now is my primary focus.
Sure. So what keeps you up at night as it relates to city government?
Oh man, I mean, as it relates to city government or just in general?
In general.
Well, obviously this race, there's a lot of individuals that, would prefer maybe another option as city council president. I think I've done a tremendous job, particularly when you look at the level of adversity, scrutiny, and challenges, personal challenges that have been like broadcasted out. But I've shown up and done my job every single day. When I think back when I ran for city council president, despite the past couple of years and all the challenges that have been presented, and I look at my platform and what I said I wanted to do, I was able to do it through all that adversity. And I look forward to having another 4 years as city council president to continue to grow and push for some of the initiatives and things that I know that we need a strong voice in City Hall to do so. And I think that that's what I represent. I don't clearly do this for the money. I tell folks all the time, I was making what I make now as an electrical engineer, 12 years ago. But I absolutely love my job because I love my city, and our city can be so much more for our people. And ultimately, that's why I do what I do.
Wonderful. Great answer. Courtney?
Do you have a role model?
Do I have a role model? That's a great question. I mean, I definitely have had different role models throughout my life. I think one person, when you say role model, sometimes you want to make that person proud of like what you're doing or how you're moving and what's going on. You want to kind of function with a certain sense of integrity and passion towards like doing the right things. And the benchmark I always hold up is like, would my mother be proud of like what I'm doing and how I'm moving? And I think she would be, right? My mother died the year before I won for my first city council race. So she didn't get a chance to see me live out my dreams, but the reality is I know the man that I've been, for my family, for my community, for the city of Baltimore, is a man that she would truly be proud of. And, that's kind of how I live off that mark. So I look up to that woman. I know I wouldn't be in the position I was in and that I'm in if it wasn't for her and all the sacrifice that she poured into me.
Wonderful. Can you walk me through a day of Nick? I mean, how does your day,
Ask the guy behind the camera. It changes like second by second. Wake up, you kind of look at the schedule, then get thrown a couple curveballs, some stuff get canceled, stuff get added. So on Mondays, typically are sometimes city council meetings. So there's a lot of meetings with the chairs. We have a council luncheon. A lot of times, maybe that's opportunities for the press to ask questions, and just like the mundane task of like running inside of City Hall and outside of City Hall, different like community, different meetings. On Wednesdays, I ask everybody to tune in. Not every Wednesday, it's like every other Wednesday. It's the Board of Estimates, which I think is the most important. Yeah, that's about the most important meeting that happens in the city of Baltimore. Typically 2 to 3 times a month, but that's at 9:00. But it's never. I mean, if you look at my schedule, it's never. I have like a standing team meeting, or I have a standing like council meeting or BOE meeting. But other than that, it really fluctuates day by day.
How does it feel as being city council president? How does it feel having so much power?
It's weird because I don't even look at it that way.
Power and responsibility.
I mean, I definitely take my job very seriously, and I feel like I'm a very competent and responsible professional in doing my job. But the gravity of the position, what it means from a charter perspective, it never really hits me until like other people talk about it or say something about it. But I'm blessed to do a job that I absolutely love, and that's serving the city of Baltimore. That's doing it in a time that I think is so critical, particularly as it relates to Black and brown people in our city. And being able to have my thumbprint on it, to try to do it and push it the right way, to try to learn from maybe some of the unintended consequences of bad policies from other cities, that went before us, that saw a tremendous amount of displacement in Black and brown communities, where we can grow our city, we can grow our economy, but we can do it responsibly with the folks that have been living with the crime, the grime, the blight in their communities. They should have access to home ownership and access to stay in their communities without being displaced. So just being able to do it at a time like this and really push that narrative in a way that if the administration doesn't completely get it, if I don't always win, at least I'm making folks think about things a little differently. And then when we get the wins, I'm excited about some of the wins that we're able to get to ensure that we're doing the best we can do for our people.
Wonderful. Do you ever see yourself running as mayor for the city of Baltimore?
I mean, right now I'm focused on president. Obviously, I love being a public servant in the city of Baltimore. I think I have a lot of value to represent and lead in the city of Baltimore in whatever capacity. And I can't say if the opportunity was to pose itself, I wouldn't do it. But right now, I'm running to be a city council president. I'm running to continue to professionalize the city council as a legislative body that we've never been. And I think that we've implemented a lot of positive things. Last year was the first year in 125 years where the council not only cut from the administration's budget, but we were able to redirect spending to things like public safety and to our young folks, particularly as it relates to providing pathways of upward mobility that's not just through college, but that's through apprenticeships and, other career paths, through vocational career paths. So, it's those types of things that get me excited, that I'm thankful for. But if the opportunity was to pose itself, I don't know.
And I want to say thank you for the phenomenal work that you do.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for the phenomenal work that you do. If I can talk about it.
You can talk
for the
about
city
it.
of Baltimore.
You're welcome.
You helped clean up a huge mess. I mean, it's been a problem. Can I talk about what
You can talk about
it? All right, so, from an accounts payable perspective, that means basically in a very fundamental way, for folks that need to be paid by the city, a lot of times we had an issue paying folks on time. And for smaller businesses, minority businesses, women-run businesses, a lot of times they don't have the capital reserve to go a net 60, 90, 120, 180, 6 months, 9 months without getting the pay that they deserve based off of the services or work that they've provided. And we had a lot of issues in the system, and you absolutely came and cleaned it up.
Thank you.
I get less and less of those emails and less of those phone calls. But that's important, because the reality is when we talk about how do we change our city, how do we move our city, it's really about ensuring that, one, local companies here are participating in city government, meaning contracts aren't going out of state, but contracts are staying local to us, because they, particularly if they're minority companies, they have a way of recycling the dollars back into our communities. They're more likely to go, and hire from our communities. They're more likely to also go procure services and other things inside of our communities. And that's where the rubber really meets the road as it relates to trying to change the trajectory of our city and of our communities. It's really about, how can we develop an economic paradigm shift, and that must start with supporting local companies.
Wonderful. And I want to thank Courtney as well, because she's on my sport team. So, we are both.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
it's a sport team. So she's,
I didn't realize
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Y'all came right in and cleaned up.
Cleaned it up. Yeah. So, Courtney.
Yes. Do you have a most memorable experience or moment?
In my life? I got a lot. What we talked about? I mean, as far as what? A most memorable experience?
Anything.
Man, that's a tough question, because maybe if it was focused on something. When my daughter was born, so my daughter was born at 28 weeks gestational. So she was 2 pounds and 8.9 ounces. When she was born. She wore my wedding ring as a bracelet. That's how small her hand and her wrist was. But it was so weird being in the hospital for 6 weeks in the NICU, and it being my precious baby, but everybody else coming in kind of scared. But it happened so fast, and it is what it is, right? We had to deal with it. That I didn't have time to really think back and think about how scary that was, and looking at your child and her being 2 pounds, right? So to go back and look at those pictures, kind of always takes me back to the day where, I'm playing in a pickup basketball game. I was in the hospital 23 hours a day for 6 weeks, and this one time I leave, she decides to come, and I'm racing down 695, driving in the emergency lane, blinkers on, get to the hospital, and able to participate in her birth. But, that's a memorable occasion.
Wonderful. I saw you at your daughter's, she had a cotillion.
Oh, cotillion.
Yeah, cotillion.
Oh yeah. Debutante. She won. She
Oh, yeah, I saw.
the queen of the.
Yeah, so, I mean, it was beautiful. I mean, you was a proud dad. We heard you clapping and celebrating your daughter. But with everything else surrounding what's going on with your family, is there anything that you want to share in a positive light about what's happening with you, your family, your children, your ex-wife? Is there anything that you want to share that you want the viewers to know on a positive aspect? Because I know that's been a very touchy situation, but from your perspective and from your voice, and not everybody's perspective, what they think they know.
I think the positive light that has come out is, when you sacrifice so much and you do so much for so many people, a lot of times, being a public servant is a thankless job, is what people would say. Right? I think during times like this of adversity, like you see the folks that you wouldn't even expect to like really have your back in ways that are meaningful. And meaningful ways are just like you're saying, like, how are you doing today? Or I'm praying about you. And, for that particular day, it's genuine. It's someone that's not just trying to be nosy or just not trying to say something and when you walk away or whisper or do this. So, I'm just thankful for, I guess, the village of folks that have had all our backs, the four of us, through this, really trying process that's been public for years. When you think about my girls and them going to school and, kids not always being nice and saying and doing stuff, just really thankful for, I guess, some of the support system that we have around us.
Wonderful. So when I take my family to the polls, when we all go to the polls, why should they vote for Nicholas?
Oh, okay. So when you go to the poll, you should vote for me because a couple of reasons. One, look, the folks in this race are great people. They love their families, they love the city. But now we need a city council president that has the experience, the grit, the know-how, the connectivity to really get the job done and continue to get the job done. And when you look at my background, again, as the city councilman that banned the box, that stopped young folks from going into liquor stores making purchases, that stood up for things like inclusionary housing. When you look at my experience on a state level where I learned a legislative process that is something that I want to emulate in Baltimore, and I was able to save the Preakness, ensuring that the Preakness did not leave and the Preakness is going to be here for our lifetime. Where, I banned the city of Baltimore from selling folks homes because of the water bill. I passed ban the box statewide. I was able to open up over $18 million in statewide scholarship funds to GED recipients when before you had to have a high school diploma to even apply, or now as a city council president where I brought local control back to the city. The first time that the citizens of Baltimore will be able to control the police department and not Annapolis since the Civil War.
Wow.
When we talk about inclusionary housing, when we talk about ensuring that all the city funded projects, anytime the city puts money into a project, that has to have set aside for affordable units in those particular buildings, whether they're in the Inner Harbor, whether they're in Mount Vernon, wherever they are, it has to have set asides for in perpetuity with no cap. So, when you look at my body of work and my resume, and then you compare it to the collective body of work and resumes of my opponents, you can put theirs together. There's pales in comparison to mine. And I think, when, again, talking about the adversity and the personal challenges that have been spewed out everywhere intentionally to kind of put harm on my name or discourage me or to embarrass me, whatever the intention was, I've shown up every single day and I've done my job the way that I thought it was needed to be done. And without that adversity and those challenges, I seriously doubt my opponents would be able to do an ounce of what I've been able to accomplish. And so, I think that right now is an important time for our community. I think that when you look at my background, my history, my experience, as relates to really getting into substantive policy to help support our communities, that there's no other person in this race that has the record, the background, and know how to do so. That's why I ask folks that I'm the only one from Baltimore. I've always been for Baltimore, and I ask the voters to allow me to continue to fight for Baltimore.
Wonderful, wonderful. I love it. Now, one more question.
All right.
What can we do to bring life back to our city? So we, as my colleague and friend, we often, we both work downtown, and what can we do to bring life back to our city? I mean, sometimes it's like, where are we going to eat? It's so, our city feel like it's just, what can you do to bring life
I
back?
hear you, but whether I go to Charlotte, I go to some other places, coming out of COVID, cities have had challenges.
Yeah.
I think the one thing coming out of COVID, for some reason in Baltimore, we've had like these new startup restaurants and activities, particularly that are black owned. I mean, clearly the biggest example is Black Swan. But then, whether it's Poppy Cuisine, whether it's this Yibo place on like Maryland Ave. I mean, places are popping up like everywhere in in places that typically you wouldn't see black owned businesses before. I think that as opposed to like focusing on maybe some of the negativity or some of the concerns, really just like develop ways of us doubling down and supporting the things that are growing and the things that are right. I'm excited about some of the new food scene. I mean, Urban Oyster in Hamden. So, all these new places that are popping up with African American owned, women led. We just celebrated, I was at Coppin Gala, and we celebrated the Cube space that's on Hartford Road. It's the largest minority owned incubator space in the entire country. Dr. Lucas over, she's an associate professor of business at Coppin. She's from West Baltimore, went to Coppin, is a Delta, and she's growing her business. They're about to open up another incubator space that's going to be bigger, better with event space and everything else. So there's a lot of positive things that are going on